Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of spirituality. It's called spiritual physics. And I'm going to be skipping over the extinction segment today and also over some of the questions that people asked. I'll probably postpone them until next week because I've got a full plate today. Okay, I'm going to start where we left off the other day, which is in consciousness. Okay, the conscious universe. Okay, and it goes something like this. This is more or less the notion a lot of these people have in mind when they think about consciousness. And you'll see this fellow there, okay, and he's got all this smoke around him. And that's more or less how people visualize, a lot of people out there visualize consciousness as some kind of aura, some kind of halo, or maybe smoke that surrounds an individual. Like if the mind transcended the brain case, and encapsulates the human being, again, like a smoke, like a mist of some kind. And people see it this way, and because of this, they introduce this consciousness thingy as a thing into physics. They think it's a real thing, and they try to explain it in terms of it being some kind of medium. Okay, they think of it as a medium. They say it's an object like a rock, and they probably will say no. But they think it's some kind of medium, like an air or something that surrounds a person, smoke, or however you want to visualize that. And that's where we start with a problem. And the problem there gets worse only because they extrapolate that and they begin to bring spirituality, sacredness first into consciousness, and then from there into physics. And there we have a lot of problems. Okay, we have all these people who want to explain things, mechanisms or whatever, or why we do things, or why things happen, and they relate it to some kind of external force, if we want to call it force, something out there that is causing us to do things, more or less it's like that. And again, the question is whether consciousness can do that. Can we say that? Is it rational to say that consciousness affects people, right? And by affecting people, I don't mean that the brain makes you do something. That's what I'm referring to. I'm saying this consciousness that's out here pushes you or pulls on you, and has some physical contact with you from outside your body, and outside the body of everyone in the universe, including, right? So the question is there a thing out here that we can call consciousness? And again, a lot of people believe this. Okay, so here's a summary where we left off the other day. I'm just going to go briefly through it. First of all, consciousness does not belong to physics. A lot of people think they do. It does, and we're going to argue here that it don't. Not at all. Okay, it has nothing to do with physics. But, again, those people who think consciousness is a thing, a medium of some kind that can push or pull or affect things from externally, right? They do bring consciousness into physics, and we say you can't do that. What is the goal of the person that tries to introduce consciousness into physics? We're saying it's just an attempt to introduce the observer, a witness, testimony. Okay, you can't do that in physics. Physics, science, right? We present our case objectively. Whatever comes out of the screen, whatever the presenter is showing, as his props or whatever, that's objective. What comes out of the screen, what comes out of an event is objective. What the audience receives, now that's a different story. Everybody might interpret something differently. But when it comes out of the screen or what comes out of Mother Nature's events, whatever phenomena occurred, that's objective. That happened only one way and one way only. Okay? What we all interpret, what we all saw, what we all think we saw, that's something else. Okay, so it's an attempt to introduce an observer. It's an attempt to introduce testimony. And the way we look at it in physics, in rational physics, is that consciousness is the product of atoms, molecules, cells. Period. We're done. It has its origin in the cellular, I guess you could call it the architecture, the system that we have inside the brain. That whole system of cells, that's what produces consciousness. Straightforward. Without that brain, you don't have consciousness. And that's more or less what the people are saying when they say consciousness is outside the brain. Well, you know, how did it get there? What keeps it out there? What produces consciousness out here, right? And again, no consciousness without cells, and it's specific to the individual. Consciousness arises from the mind of the individual. And again, we're even talking about consciousness of a lion, whatever consciousness is at its level, you know, the lion's level, consciousness of an ant, whatever consciousness it has at that small, tiny, in that small, tiny world in which the ants live, right? So there's different levels of consciousness, but the question is, how does it arise? And is the consciousness, the source of consciousness of an ant, of a lion, of a human, the same? In other words, do they all relate or originate with the cells that form the brain of that animal? Okay, that's the bottom line. And again, we're going to say that not only is it individual, but it's a specific electrochemical and magnetic process. And here, I'm going to illustrate that a little bit here. This is more or less what the brain does. It's got all these cells in there, and you have all this motion going on, and this is what creates the consciousness inside a brain. This is just a small portion, but it gives you an idea of how the brain might be processing this thing we call consciousness. What comes out of here, this abstraction we call consciousness. And yes, a lot of people think that consciousness can exist without this, without these cells. Now, where do they get this? They get a lot of this from, especially in this day and age, they get it from something like this, the universal filaments. You know, people have illustrated what they think is out there, that all these connections between stars and galaxies, something is binding them or connecting them in some way. Some say it's electricity, others say it's plasma, or maybe it's space-time or ether, whatever word they want to put in there, it doesn't really matter. But this is the way they visualize it. They say everything is somewhat connected. But then the question is, connected by what? Okay? And here you have another vision of that, like a static image. This is more or less what they have in their minds, and they equate this with the with what we have in our brains, you know, these cells. And so they say, hey, we're connected just like the universe is connected, and the universe is connected just like our brain is connected. All the cells there, all the units, whatever units you want to use, cells, atoms, molecules. And so this is where they established that relation between the universe having a brain, consciousness, and a human having brain. Okay? We're saying it's not outside the brain. You can't have it there. And part of the reason here you see the difference between the structures of what we're talking about, you know, the universe versus human brain, right? And here you have a picture of that. You can see at the bottom you have some kind of rock, quartz, crystal, whatever that is. And that would be the crystal structure of the, if you break it up, that's what you would see like under the microscope. Okay, you would see a crystal structure, and you can see it's a little bit different than the structure that you see for a cell, which is the one on the top, and DNA, which is the one on the right. Okay, these structures are different, and it's the structure that's going to make the difference in the production of what we call consciousness. It's more or less like the difference between metal and a machine. You know, the fact that you have a piece of metal doesn't mean it's going to produce the work that a machine does made of that same metal. So we have to distinguish metal from machine. And that's more or less the difference between, at some level, right, between a cell and a rock, right? The structure is not the same, okay? And you need a given structure to produce consciousness. Hopefully rocks do not, okay? And so, you can't equate just matter and say, well, all matter has consciousness. No, it's not sufficient to have be made out of atoms. It's got to have a specific construction, specific architecture in order to produce consciousness. At least that's what we say here, right? So it's not outside the brain, and it's not, again, it's individual. It's not a crowd or an aggregation of things, you can't say that there's a consciousness in the crowd. You can't use a word like that. Consciousness is what's inside the person's brain. And you can take the consciousness of different people in the crowd and call that the collective consciousness. But again, the consciousness, you got to be careful then with the definition. What do you mean by consciousness when you do that? Okay, and we're going to limit it to what's inside the brain of an individual. So we can't use it as an aggregate of matter, just randomly saying, oh, we aggregate matter and we're going to get consciousness. And therefore, there's no universal consciousness in physics, the way we look at it in physics. Now, a lot of people would like to think that stars, planets, and galaxies, these asteroids out there, this whole body of matter somehow produces consciousness. And again, for that, the person would have to tell us how do you produce consciousness? What produces consciousness? And you cannot equate what we have inside our brain, which is a very totally different architecture or structure than what you see out there in the universe. You cannot equate the cells that we have in the brain working together with what's out there between stars and galaxies. The structure out there is way different than what we have inside our brain. And so to say that Father Universe, has consciousness, well, that's stretching it quite a bit. Okay, so that's more or less the introduction. The only thing I'm going to add on that is that here you have, people think that, again, consciousness is outside the brain, and like a smoke or whatever is out there, they visualize. And no, the consciousness is only what's inside that person's head. That's where it's all happening. Pain, love, attraction, anything like that goes inside that brain. None of it's outside the brain. The only thing that goes outside the brain are things that touch the skin of the person, but not consciousness itself. There's no smoke following you around all day long every time you think. Okay, so, these are the ideas we want to destroy here in this site, at least. Okay, here you have what I presented the other day, which is the universal movie. And again, Father Universe does not have consciousness. Why? Because Father Universe is only all atoms in the universe at a given location. Okay? Father Universe only has existence. All the atoms only have existence, which is distance from each other and meaning location. That's it. Father Universe is not alive. Father Universe does not live. And therefore, Father Universe does not have consciousness. For this, you would have to have several frames of the universal movie, right? You would have to have not only every atom at a given location with respect to all others, and location, again, is a static concept. You can see it in a single frame of the film. Here, you would need to see several frames of the film to see Father Universe move and have consciousness and have time as well. You compare it against some other motion. But Father Universe is only every atom in the universe wherever it sits. And looks more or less like this, I guess. The universe is a ball of matter, right? And that ball there includes everything like galaxies and planets and stars and whatever. If you take a snapshot of that, this is probably what you would get, something like this. Or maybe we talked about the donut-shaped universe as well, and there could be other shapes as well. This is just an example. But what I'm saying is, if you had God's camera and you take a 3D picture of the universe from afar, from bird's eye perspective, maybe you would get something like this, right? But again, we're talking about a snapshot. And when you look at the snapshot, you can look at any snapshot you want. You should not see motion inside the picture. That means every atom only has location with respect to all others, and that's what we call Father Universe. If you're talking about consciousness, you're talking about something else. You're talking about the entire movie or a clip where all these atoms move from location to location, okay? And there we have a problem because Father Universe does not have memory, okay? And that's an important point to mention. You know, in order to have consciousness, you would have to have memory, okay? You can't just have it in a single frame of the universal movie. You cannot have it without motion, without time, without change of location, okay? You can only have consciousness if you can go to the past and go to the future. And Father Universe can't do that because that would mean that Father Universe has a file cabinet where he keeps all the slices of time, all the slices of motion, right? Each one is a slice that only contains location, and you have all these locations. And Father Universe would be able to have that whole series, right, of locations. Would have to go to the past. But see, there's no such thing for Father Universe. Father Universe, every atom in the universe can only occupy a single location. And in the next frame of the film, every atom now has a different location with respect to the previous frame. Okay, so you're moving from location to location. But once you move to these other locations, there is no memory. Those same atoms are not at the previous locations because otherwise you would be creating new atoms as you move along. You would not have different locations, you would have different atoms. Okay, and so when you say that Father Universe moves, lives, has consciousness, what you're saying is this entity, this inert entity, right, known as bunch of atoms, right, in the universe that only have location, is creating new atoms as we go along, and he can go back, Father Universe can go back and remember, right, memorize what he did, where all the atoms were some time back. There is no such filing cabinet. There is no such computer that keeps track of all the things that Father Universe did. That's only humans who do that. And animals here on Earth, maybe a lion remembers something in the past. Wildebeest, they probably remember stuff like that. They have a certain memory, right? Capacity for memory. But Father Universe is a bunch of atoms. And they're not structured in any way like the brain of a human. So there's no way that he has a file cabinet with all the events that always happened, with all the atoms in the universe at a given location in the past. There's no such thing. Once all atoms move to a new location, that's again a single frame of the movie, of the universal movie, and all atoms are at a given distance, at a new given distance with respect to each other. And that's it. All you have is cross sections of time, cross sections of motion, location. That's all you have, existence. Okay. Here we have this thing where people think that people say this is where they make that jump from consciousness to spirituality. Okay, because they say, "Oh, we have consciousness. Why not spirituality?" And here you have it. Someone out there, I think this was from a site that promotes Buddhism, right? Lion's Roar. And it says everything is connected. Okay, we have no problem with that because we propose the rope model and we say everything is connected, physically connected. But these people say we're all connected by what? Consciousness. And they talk about the flow of consciousness. Okay, and there we have a problem because consciousness, energy, any words like those are just concepts. You cannot say we're connected by energy or we're connected by consciousness, not in physics at least, okay? Connect is a word that belongs exclusively to physics. If you're going to talk about connection, right, in physics, it requires a physical object. That's a connection. You can't say we're connected by love or by information or by intelligence or whatever. You can't use concepts and say that we're connected by these concepts. And that's where the problem is, because that's the first step. And the next one, is, guess what? You're introducing some esoteric nonsense in there where you say, oh, I'm going to make it sacred. I'm going to create this intelligence out there, this designer, I guess, this person or this individual, human-like, obviously, that governs all things and has a purpose for all this, That's where you take the big jump, and they bring that into physics. No, then you do have to define what you mean by consciousness, by existence, especially by location, motion, time, etc. Okay, so here we have our good spiritual man. That's what these people believe, and you can see that he's got the atom in his chest. So they want to introduce consciousness, spirituality altogether into the world of physics by saying, hey, we're also going to somehow reconcile it with the atom. And that's a big no-no, because now they're trying to say, hey, the atom has something to do with consciousness, and so does spirituality, because spirituality is the next step in consciousness. And it's not just consciousness, but we take one more step, and now we have spirituality, which is some kind of sacredness, some spirit that you're introducing, whatever spirit is, right? Intelligence, mind, thought. So one of the ways we can really pinpoint this whole thing is really zeroing in on the definition. What is spirituality? What is a spirit? What is sacredness? What do we mean by sacred? Some of these people are going to talk about sacred geometry, for example. What are they talking about? What do you mean sacred? Geometry, what's sacred about it? And so for this, you need to understand the definitions of these words. And here you have one. This is from the Wikipedia, essentially. Okay, you have spirituality, religious process of reformation, reformation. Really, it's formation again, right? Aiming to return to a life oriented towards the Holy Spirit, meaning God. Okay, so spirituality, yes, does have to do with the Holy Spirit or with the Spirit, meaning some kind of God or some kind of smoke out there that resembles a human that can think. This is the way they always visualize these things. Spirit is, that bed sheet, like Casper, the friendly ghost, that goes around and can talk and do things and move their arms. It's got a one-way touch. It can touch you, but you cannot touch it. So, the ghost can go through walls and then can pick up things, and then go through the wall again. So it's got this one-way touch, or a touch that it can turn on and off at will. That's really funny. In fact, the movie Ghost had something like that, where the guy finally is able to touch something in the real world for a moment or so. So if the spirit can move your curtain, then it has the ability to touch. Then how can it go through walls then? Doesn't it bang against the wall? Anyway, it says, in modern times, the term was broadened to refer to a subjective experience of a sacred dimension. Now we're talking about sacred. Oh, man. New word. Okay? Involving belief in what? Supernatural realm beyond the ordinarily observable world. A quest for what? A sacred meaning. Religious experience. What's sacred? Something that is dedicated or set apart for the service or worship of what? A deity. Okay, so sacred, spirituality, they both have to do with deities, with gods, with spirits, with ghosts, with goblins, I guess, witches brew. Spirit, as a supernatural entity, what is that? An incorporeal, no body, okay? Immaterial being. Okay, so spirit refers to that which it doesn't have shape, essentially. The non-corporeal essence of living things. Okay, so spirit has always referred to this thingy we have inside us called mind, thought, and which people can't explain very well. You say, I don't know what that is, but I'm able to think. I'm able to process things in my head, and I don't know how I'm doing that. I can't get inside my brain to see how that's done. So they've created this thing called spirit, right? Made it sacred, right? Because you got to give credit to whoever made that thing, right? I guess. And so spirit is this thing we equate with mind, with thought, and usually put it outside of ourselves in the form of, again, as a spirit, as a bedsheet, as God, as whatever you want to visualize it is. And that's how they handle this. And what's divine? Characteristics of a deity. Yeah. Divinity or the divine are things that are either related to, devoted to, or proceeding from a deity. In pantheism and animism, this becomes synonymous with concepts of what? Sacredness and transcendence. Yeah, what happens is all these people are, doing a lot of cocaine. They're sniffing a lot of shrooms there, and they start flying high. They don't have their feet on the ground after a while, and that's part of the problem. Consciousness is very simple. Or like, who was it? Descartes, René Descartes, he said, I am, I think, therefore I am. And, I'll get to that in a second, but essentially he wasn't referring to the fact that he exists. He was really referring to the fact that he is mind. He is not this body that's out here. Because if you kill him, the body is still there, but he still has a mind. He doesn't have a mind anymore. So he cannot produce thought. He cannot produce mind. So we have a problem there because we have the body, but we have no mind. Well, what happened to the mind? What happened to the thought? Well, it floated away as a separate entity. Yeah, so you can see how this has been used over the centuries, right? The mind is something separate from the body. And René Descartes was one of the ones who pushed for that. Okay, so here we have a mind, I call it the mind-body duality. It's known as mind-body duality. I call it the mind-boggling duality, right? Because that's what it is. What you have is these this dichotomy or these dualities or these irreconcilable notions, or they're not the same. They're trying to say that you cannot treat these as one and the same. Mind, body, matter, energy. Okay, they talk about, especially in mathematical physics, they say mathematical physics, meaning physics as they see it, is the study of what? Matter and energy. Like if energy were something different than matter, right? And they say, well, matter is something you can see or touch. Energy is that which you don't. Because energy doesn't have shape, doesn't have extension, and it doesn't have, it's not a corporeal thing. It's not a body, but it does things. It's that spirit that does things between actual things, atoms, right? And then you have the particle-wave duality, right? What is particle-wave? Well, again, it's the difference between matter and energy, mind and body. That's what they're talking about. In fact, in the mind-body, I got them in reverse. It should have been body-mind, but I guess you see what I'm talking about. Anyways, the particle is a thing, whereas the wave, right? Particle-wave, wave-particle duality. The particle is the thing, and wave is what it does. It's the motion. And so we say the thing is the noun, the motion is the verb. And what they've done, they found out that, waves, or what has waves, right, or whatever that wave is, also has particle properties, and particles have wave properties. So what they've done is, to cover all the bases, they said, look, the noun is also a noun verb, and the verb is a verb noun. Okay, so they covered all bases. That way they solved the problem. And all they did was muddle the whole thing, because now we don't know the difference between matter and energy, because they both are waves, they're both are particles, and they just leave it at that and walk away. They say that's what we found. That's what our equations tell us. And we're done, We fixed the problem. And that's where we are today. They don't understand squat. Why? Because of this, because of the body-mind, mind-body duality. That's where the problem starts. And they never fixed the problem. That's the reality of it. Here you have, we go back in history, you go back to Aristotle, and he came up with what is known as hylomorphism today, hyl. And hyl is the four elements, earth, water, air, and fire. And what are they talking about? Well, those are the things that construct a body, okay? In fact, Aristotle defined matter as that out of which a thing is made. That's more or less was his definition. He was talking about mereology, saying matter is what we use to, what things are made of. Okay? But that's a problem, because matter is every object, every atom in the universe, right? That's matter. That's the body of matter. That's a universal body of matter. Now, is a table made out of matter? Yes, it's made out of atoms, just like everything else in the universe. Table is made out of atoms, right? But we don't say that table is a billion atoms. That's not what a table is, because an elephant is also a billion atoms, and so is a plant, a house, a rock. Everything is made out of billions of atoms. That's not the definition of those words. And so you can't say, in other words, you can't use the word matter at all, because it's a word that has no use if you're just saying that that's what everything's made of. And you cannot compare the matter of the universe, saying all the atoms that are in the universe, and then say, that's what a chair is made of. You can't. You've got two different contexts there. So you have to really define the word matter in that sense. And we've defined matter as the objects that exist, period. Okay? It could be for any system, could be for a table, could be for a house, could be for the universe. It's the objects that exist. Okay? And if you're going to chop it off at a table, you say, well, all the objects that exist on the table, right? Which are the atoms that make it up. But again, that's where the problem starts, because again, they say matter and energy, right? And they're going to use that word energy. What is this energy? Well, it's like the soul, Aristotle said. That which makes living things alive. This vis viva, right? The live whatever that pushes you to move your arms and do things. You have that energy inside you, whatever that energy is. And so, again, people don't define these things, and they equate all these concepts with each other. You have the soul equated to energy, and that equating to mind and thought and all these abstractions. And but again, Aristotle, even though he didn't think of soul as a form, he did say it's some kind of form. Because again, they never define form. Well, what do you mean by form? What do you mean by shape? You have something there. They never defined the word object. And they were not able to distinguish soul from matter and energy from matter, right? Or objects from soul, because they never defined exactly or had a real solid notion of what an object is. If you define objects that which has shape, that eliminates soul, thought, mind, spirit. All those words are eliminated. Energy, mass, all those words are concepts, field, right? You get rid of all those words. But if you don't define the word object, that which has shape, then you're going to include all this other stuff in there, because you say, well, I can't see or touch energy, but there's something that I can't see or touch that's doing something to, causing an effect, a physical effect over something. And that's a problem, because you're not defining, you're not specifying what you're talking about. You're just leaving that out in the open, like say, well, you can think about it as any way you want, but there's something there. And no, there is no something there. Okay, so that's the question. Until you define what something is, you can't say there's energy is a something, or that soul is a something. Okay, so this is where we run into trouble. Well, there were many people who touched upon this subject over the centuries, and the guy who really picked up on it and made it popular was Descartes, René Descartes. He had this mind-body duality, okay? And what was he trying to do? Why did he come up with this nonsense? Well, he said, look, we have to separate mind from body, because when a person dies, something has to outlive him. The mind, the soul, it's going to go to heaven or hell, depending on if he was good or bad or whatever, right? And so now something has to come out of him. You can't say that was the purpose of that guy ended there, that all the wrongs he did in his life are not going to get punished. All the good things he did in his life, he's not going to be rewarded. So the soul had to come out of the body. But for that, you had to make the soul something different than the body, right? And so now we have this soul that it's incorporeal, but it's corporeal. Because something's leaving the body, it's going to go somewhere. heaven if the guy was good, right? And so we have to provide a rational basis for that, or he attempted to do that. And that's where that was the notion that he had when he wrote about mind-body duality, okay? And so he said mind is separate from entity called the body. There's two different things. It's like the mind is something they put inside this robot, called you. And so your name is Charlie Smith. Okay, so you're Charlie Smith, but you're not Charlie Smith until they put the mind inside your brain. Okay, and they can take the mind, out when you die and leaves, and you go back to being a robot, tin can. More or less, that's the way they see it. They see the mind separate from the body. Okay, so what is a body? Well, it's a spatially extended substance. Okay, spatially extended, right? It has a limit, meaning it's got shape. That's what we say in physics. Okay, it's incapable of feeling or thought. So if you just have body, if you just have this spatially extended robot skin, whatever you want to call it, you still don't have feeling or thought. You want to have feeling or thought, you have to put in the mind back into the into the scarecrow. So far you're just a scarecrow. You don't even talk, right? But now they put the mind in there. Now you can do things. You're intelligent now, right? Mind, on the other hand, is unextended, meaning it has no shape. It has no form. It's unextended, right? But it does all the thinking, feeling, and in that sense, it's a substance. It's a thing. It's a body. It's an object, a medium. Use any word you want. Okay, I don't care. So it's an unextended, extended thing, because if it's a body, if it has shape, it better be extended. And they're saying it's unextended, but it has a separate existence to the body. And so now we have a problem, because we have a problem with definitions. You got to go back and say, look, what do you mean by object? What do you mean by body? What do you mean by, what is a thing? Okay? And this is where we have a problem, because they want to say that mind is a thing, but it's a thing a little different than the real things that have shape. And you can see how we're having problems with that. It's going to create problems. Okay, it's a question of language. You got to fix the language before you can get into thought, into analyzing this thing. Okay, and again, if the mind has no extension, has no shape, how does it interact with body? Like, if my mind is telling me to move my arm up and down, right? How is my mind doing that if mind has no? If there's no body there, it has no skin, no surface, no shape, how does it interact with that which does have shape? All the cells in my body, right? All the organs that I have. How does it interact? So again, you can't separate mind and say, well, it's a separate thing that moves the robot called Bill Gates. And when he dies, I guess it goes to hell. It moves out of the body. How do you do that? What is it that's leaving the body? Okay, so this is where the problem is. Okay, that's good old Renee there. Okay. Anyways, this is where we start, and so they never fixed that problem. What you have today is a lot of people who are trying to bring that into physics, and they have all these shows, all these YouTube videos. They write books. They have these clubs. They also have, organizations in which they promote a lot of this religion, right? They call it physics. They say they're superior to the physicists because they can. They have one more level, which is the level of consciousness, which physics doesn't deal with, but they're above that because they not only incorporate all the physics, all the atoms, all the space-time, all the other stuff that mathematical physics has created, but they are superior because they're also encapsulating all that or embodying that within consciousness, within spirituality. Okay, and this is here's a couple of examples. Here's one fellow, and his name is Greg Braden. He wrote a book called The Divine Matrix. Whoa! And what is he doing? He's bridging time, space, miracles, and belief. Now you talk about physics. There you have all the physics in almost one sentence. Time, space, space-time, right? Miracles and belief, all together, all in one nice little package sold to you for a meager price. Okay, and so these are some of the books he wrote. Okay, you can see here just by reading some of the titles, you can see where this fellow is going with his physics, you could say, with his way of thinking. Okay, he's got the language of the divine matrix, the science of self-empowerment, belief. You know, they have all these scientific proof that the law of attraction actually works. Unified consciousness. And they have access to the universal intelligence. How about that? You know, he's saying that there's some universal intelligence out there, God, maybe the consciousness of the universe, and you can tune into that somehow. You know, maybe if you follow his instruction in his book, if you think hard enough, and you, I don't know, do some asanas or whatever from the Indians, Hindus, or the Buddhists, maybe you can, if you concentrate deep enough, maybe you can make contact with the universal intelligence, whatever that is. But here's another fellow, and his name is Robert Gilbert, and this is what he has to say, okay? Let me put him on for you. You let the horse's mouth say it all, right? And here he goes. Okay, listen carefully.
Sacred geometry teaches the master patterns which create our world and which are the true secret behind all manifestation.
So what they're going to try to do, people like him, like this fellow Gilbert, Robert Gilbert, is they're going to try to merge geometry with spirituality. And so they end up with this thing called sacred geometry, whatever that is. And I'll have him explain it because, you know, people might say you're putting words in this fellow's mouth. No, let him tell you what he's doing. So I've got a couple clips here for you to listen from him so that you can see how they're trying to, people like him, you know, snake oil peddlers, that's what they are, how they recruit people with very weak minds, hypnotize them and get them to buy their books or to join their clubs or whatever, right? And so this is what Gilbert says. We're going to go step by step. He goes here and says the following, okay? Listen carefully. Here goes.
That what stands behind this physical structure is the net, the vibrational matrix of energy that this form crystallized out of. Everything is energy. So sacred geometry patterns are crystallized forms, showing us the invisible vibrational matrix, which is the higher reality.
Okay, and now, fortunately for you, if you join his club or you read his book or whatever, you donate money to him, he's going to show you how to reach these higher dimensions or you know, tune into the universe, you know, be one with the universe. I don't want to be one with the universe yet, but someday I'll be. So here he goes. He gives you a little sales pitch saying how that he can do that for you, right? So here he goes. Listen to him.
These 2D or 3D sacred geometry patterns may actually have the hidden power to energetically connect us to higher dimensional realities.
So there are all these higher dimensions out there, right? Now he's going to tune into them. He's going to show you how these turn into this energy, this consciousness turns into physical objects, okay? So listen to him. This is the last one. So here he goes.
Modern materialistic science doesn't allow itself to consider any planes above the physical plane. Working with higher planes, along with the net of the vibrational matrix, is a key secret of spiritual initiation. This makes possible the materialization of energy and thought forms into physical reality.
Well, I can't believe the guy's so serious. He really believes in what he's saying. Some people are just, what is it, snake oil peddlers. This guy, in a way, he is, but I think he also believes in what he's saying. You know, some people just try to fool you. This guy believes in it, and that's what's incredible, that they really think in these weird terms where they say, look, there's all these levels of consciousness, and there's all these dimensions out there, and you can tune into them. You know, if you follow his instructions and do it the right way, right? You can tune into these other higher dimensions where you're going to see a different universe, a universe that affects your consciousness. And of course, they mix it with sacredness and spirituality, with this sacred geometry, that it has some kind of meaning. And if you can tune into these higher dimensions, the four-dimensional, tesseract, I guess, or the fifth dimension, I don't know what he's going to put as the fifth one or the sixth one. And if you can tune into these, that's going to affect your consciousness, meaning it's going to affect your life in everyday life. That means it's got a useful purpose in the end, and you might as well, contribute to his treasury and join his clubs or buy his books. So, these people are selling you nonsense, but I think some of them actually believe that in all these levels of dimensions and consciousness and spirituality, and that's what they sell. And a lot of people really buy this stuff and think that they're talking about physics or that it's going to affect the physical world in some way. Okay, and here's the final guy for these. I've talked about him in the past. His name is Nassim Haramein, I think Haramein, something like that. And he says the following: he says the universe is self-aware. It's conscious, right? But you're going to see how he also is going to nudge it into spirituality. He says, I believe so. I think it is. I think it's self-aware at all levels. And again, Father Universe cannot be aware or self-aware or anything aware at all, because it's just a bunch of atoms. Is the sun like a star, right? Is a star aware? Aware of what? How is the sun a ball of gas, right? More or less. How is that different than a rock, in the sense that it's inanimate? It's and it's made out of inert atoms, each one inert being, right? In other words, each atom does not think. So you can't say, well, the thinking of all these atoms create this bigger thought. You can't even say that. It's just a bunch of atoms. That's all they are. Well, what is an asteroid? Does an asteroid think? Is an asteroid self-aware? So these people bring all this nonsense in there, saying the universe is self-aware. And he said, such wondrous things that he said, it just blew me away. Now, it blows me away because such ridiculous nonsense, that's why it blows me away, right? Father Universe is only atoms. That's it. There is no motion as far as Father Universe is concerned. All that he's got is location of every atom in the universe, and then the next frame he moves to every atom to a different location. That's all we have, and that's the whole sequence of the universal movie. And any cross section that you take is all you have is location, existence of every atom. That's it. And these people talk about self-awareness, like if all those atoms somehow have some memory and project the future and can see backwards and forward in time, right? And so they create this awareness of, I'm aware of what Bill did yesterday. No. Hopefully Father Universe can't tell what I did yesterday, okay? He doesn't have memory. He doesn't have a file cabinet or a computer where he keeps all the files of everything that happened. Okay, that's us humans. We have this magical ability to remember. Father Universe does not. He's just a bunch of atoms. That's all he is. Okay, and so they introduce this stuff into so-called physics. This guy calls himself a physicist, and it's more than dangerous. It's I'd say it's ridiculous. It's laughable. And so how does this fellow define consciousness? He says consciousness is an information feedback mechanism that lets us know we exist. Everything is consciousness. Great. I think he said a mouthful there. I'll have to spend the rest of the year trying to figure out what he said there. And someone asked him in one of his videos, host says, what is consciousness? And he tries to answer that question. He says, consciousness is the fundamental information structure of the universe. whatever that means. What do you mean information structure? Information and structure. Structure belongs to physics, information does not. And so you can't say information structure, not if you're a physicist. So whatever he meant by that, but then he uses these words, and people say, a lot of people who follow him or believe in what he says, they say, oh, that was so deep. It's information moving. I like that. It's information moving through its cycles throughout the whole network of creation. Creation? This guy believes that information moves and that there was a moment of creation. So, you can see where all these people are coming from. They're coming from a religious point of view. They're trying to get their word out there that they believe in creation, but they don't want to maybe say it so specifically so that they're not turned away by mathematical physicists who do not believe in creation, meaning a God that created the universe, right? They still believe in creation in the sense they believe in the singularity, but not that God created the singularity or started the ball rolling. And he says it's occurring in the chairs, it's occurring in the tables, and it's occurring in us. So consciousness is everywhere. The chairs have consciousness, so do the tables, and so do us. Man, I didn't know the chair I'm sitting on is conscious. I better, maybe after I drink 10 beers I'll believe it, but right now I haven't. So I don't know what he's talking about. But he said the difference between the consciousness of tables and chairs in us is the complexity of the information in us reached a level in which we became self-aware. So again, if consciousness is self-awareness, and he's saying that tables and chairs are conscious, meaning that they are self-aware, in what sense is our self-awareness different than the self-awareness of tables and chairs? I guess it's just a level. Okay? But this is what the nonsense these people talk about, and it's all religious stuff. This is all spirituality. It has nothing to do with physics, but they introduce it as if it were physics, okay? And so here Nassim goes way out, and so you can picture what he has in his tiny little brain, okay? This is what he says. There is a flow of the energy of the universe inside of you. So we have all this energy flowing inside of you, okay? Everything is connected through this energy. And again, energy does not belong to physics. Connected does. Connect is a word that belongs exclusively to physics. If you're going to talk about connect, you're not talking about connected by love or intelligence or energy. You're talking about connected through a physical entity. There has to be a physical entity. There's no such thing as action at a distance, not in physics. In mathematical physics, perhaps, but not in physics. Space is what's connecting everything. Space, you mean nothing? Space is vacuum, and it's connecting things? So he's equating energy with space and saying that this is what he's going to use to connect everything. He's going to use this as a physical connector. And all he had to do, instead of saying space is the thing, right, that connects all things, right? Great. So please draw this thing that you call space, this thing you call energy, so that we know how it physically connects one atom to another. That's what we need to figure out. And he says one little proton is connected to all other protons in the universe. Great, we don't disagree with that. But he says spin, the one thing that connects us all. So we have now energy, space, spin, all these things connect us, right? Spin, like you spin a top, and the spin of the top, not the top, but the spin of the top is what connects us. Okay? Space-time is an energy. That's what space-time is. I thought it was a pair of number lines, but he says it's energy. That connects everything. So he's using all these words to say, hey, the universe is connected, because that's what he vouches for. And he's using all these undefined terms, these esoteric words, these abstractions, concepts, whatever, energy, space, spin, space-time, ether. And he's using them almost as synonyms. He doesn't define a single one. He would not be able to define a single one. No one has. Okay? And that's how he's going to make his case. He calls himself a physicist. The electromagnetic or electrostatic field that we see as matter is just a function of the dynamics of that ether. Well, neither field nor ether are things. And again, he's using all these concepts. He's using them as objects. Then he says gravity is a function of that ether. Again, gravity is, what is gravity? How does it work? What do you mean a function of that ether? How does gravity work? Why does this pencil fall to the floor? That's what you got to tell me. What's the mechanism? And he says space, matter, mass, charge, gravity, electromagnetic field. There are no differences between these things. They're all connected through quantum fluctuations. And again, fluctuation is not something that connects anything. Fluctuation is a verb. Yeah, that's what it is. You can't connect things through verbs. And I like his ending comment. He says, it's really hard to wrap your head around it. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, you can't wrap your head around. You can't understand no one can understand what he said, because he's just using words of incantation that people just, who don't understand those words, because no one can, say, oh, he said something so deep, so intelligent, so breathtaking, And yeah, I agree that he said something breathtaking, no doubt about that one. Okay, these people are supported by institutions such as the Templeton Foundation, which gives out a prize which is bigger than the Nobel Prize, by the way, in quantity, right? And that's John Templeton there. You can see his with the good old Mama Teresa, right? Establishes the Templeton Prize for Progress in what? Religion, now known as simply as the Templeton Prize. Yeah, they had to take that progress in religion out of there, because otherwise people say, oh, that's a religious prize. No, he said, we're doing a scientific prize, but we're merging, some spirituality into all of this. We're bringing people like Hahnemann and, Gilbert and so on. We're bringing all these people in, giving them prizes, making them celebrity. Why? Because they're trying to merge science with religion. And there he says the primary areas of concentration were, right, utilization of scientific methods in understanding the work and purpose of the what? Creator. Research on studying or stimulating progress in religion, and research on the benefits of religion. Okay? And the question is, yeah, I guess spirituality, religion, whatever you want to call it, is there any benefit to that? What's the benefit of religion? I mean, I can just as well mention a lot of history where religion caused wars, killing, murders, right? Torture. We've had a lot of that thanks to religion. Religion is what? Opinions, ways of thinking of some people, right? And so they murdered people, they tortured people, is that part of religion? And again, so what is the benefit of religion? And how do you merge it with science? I mean, don't we have to define these terms? And that's what I try to do. I start with definitions. Science is explanations, and religion is opinion. Period. One has nothing to do with the other. And so when they introduce these things, what they're trying to introduce is these spirits, right? This spirituality. And they say you need to incorporate that into your scientific research, the spirituality aspect of it. Because we have all these ghosts and goblins out there that we can't see or touch. We'll call them energy to make it scientific. And they intervene in life, and cause phenomena to happen. And so there's got to be some kind of religious aspect to science, physics. And that's the story today. So, just keep all that in mind, the way these people are thinking and how they're selling their products, they're pushing their ideas into physics, through spirituality, through consciousness. And it's one of the reasons I reject the word consciousness at all time. It just drives me up the walls every time I hear it, because I don't want to hear the word consciousness into physics. You want to talk about consciousness, take it somewhere else, but don't bring it into physics any more that you're going to bring spirituality in there. Okay, so, and I want to make clear that I have no problem with someone introducing God. Okay, I treat that a little different, because God is a physical object. I mean, if you introduce it as a physical object, you say, look, God is this guy with a beard and a magic wand. No problem. I have no problem whatsoever with that. It's a good assumption. I mean, the question is whether you can defend that assumption, but I mean, it's a valid assumption in the sense that you're introducing a physical object, you're going to explain a physical phenomenon, right? You're going to say, how did the universe start? Well, there was this fellow, his name is God, and he had a magic wand, and he made the universe. Okay, so far so good. Okay, up to that point, we haven't asked any questions yet. We understand what the guy's saying. We put a god with a magic gun and beard, you know. Okay, we got that. And then the next frame, he's got the universe. No problem. Now, we have a problem because now we go back and say, okay, how did he create the universe? And before that, you know, how did he come into being? And they might say, well, he lived forever. Okay, fine. He had no mother. Okay, and you can understand what the guy is saying, but you cannot introduce spirit or consciousness because you can't start your dissertation saying spirituality or spirit. I introduce a spirit. Well, what's a spirit? Well, it's an incorporeal nothing. So what are you going to put in the first frame of the film? Nothing? Oh, that's great. And then from nothing, you create all these somethings. You put people to work because of this nothingness that they have in their brain. I mean, if you're going to introduce consciousness and spirituality as something, right, then you better have a shape there because you got to put it in the first frame of the film. Otherwise, all you did was say that, this thingy, this thought process that we have in our brain, you turned it into a physical object. And at the same time, you turned it into a thing, into a substance, medium, entity, but you're not going to give it any corporeal structure. You're not going to give it any shape. So it's a thing that doesn't have shape. And that's a no-no. In physics, all things have shape. That's where you have to start. Okay, with that, I'll see you next week. And hopefully, I think we finished with consciousness and spirituality, but I thought that needed to be addressed. We'll see what kind of questions people have by next week, and I'm going to answer those questions. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.